Before your eyes even open, the step announces itself. The felt walls of the Gur tremble under the push of the pre-dawn wind, and the leftover chill from the night has settled deep into your bones. When you breathe, a thin cloud of vapor escapes your lips, floating in the darkness like a wandering spirit. Waking up isn't a choice. In the army of Genghis Khan, the sun does not rise for you. You rise before it. When you pull aside the flap of your tent, silence is nowhere to be found. The steppe never sleeps. Horses exhale heavy plumes of steam into the morning air, their hooves thudding softly against the frozen ground. Somewhere in the half-shadow, patrol riders pass by, their leather gear whispering with each stride. The sky is still the color of cold ash, with only the faintest line of pale rose on the horizon, hinting that daylight will eventually come. But here, light is not a comfort. Here is simply the beginning of another test. Thin columns of smoke rise between the rows of jers, drifting like slow-moving ghosts. The night watch has been tending the embers, now coaxing the fire back to life. The smoke carries that familiar scent of burnt dung, sour, heavy, yet somehow reassuring. If there's smoke, the camp still breathes. Even before the stars fully fade, the camp begins to stir. Because soldiers of the Great Khan are more than fighters. They are discipline-made flesh. They embody momentum, structure, and relentless readiness. And you are no exception. When your bare feet touch the ground, the earth feels like a slab of ice. Yet the discomfort doesn't surprise you. You no longer respond to cold with emotion. You only identify it like one identifies an old scar. Your horse greets you with a slow breath, pushing warm mist into the frosted air. The animal recognizes you instantly, shifting its weight and waiting patiently. You run a hand through its coarse mane, and for a moment, the steppe feels less unforgiving. A Mongol is never alone so long as he has his horse. The morning hasn't even fully begun, yet there is much to do. Bowstrings must be inspected, stirrups tightened, armor straps reinforced, rations prepared, knots retied. In the army of Genghis Khan, victory belongs not to those who fight hardest, but to those who prepare best. The Khan himself once said that battles are won before the clash, not during it. As the camp comes alive, your eyes drift back toward the horizon. The world stretches endlessly, a sea of trembling grass under a sky wide enough to swallow all fear. There are no forests to hide in, no mountains to shelter behind, no walls to climb. Only wind, open land, and the quiet cruelty of distance. Out here, a man may lose himself or discover the edges of his own spirit. You have known both. The first true sounds of morning aren't birds, but the sharp commands of officers echoing across the plain. Men respond quickly. The movements are efficient, fluid, precise. The rhythm of an army that has learned to bend the world with its speed. Something inside you awakens too. Not merely your warrior's instinct, but your identity as a Mongol. To survive here is to be forged by the steppe itself. The smell of breakfast wafts through the camp, the heavy scent of dried meat, the comforting steam of warm milk. It's not pleasure you seek, but fuel. In the Khan's army, food is not indulgence, only endurance. You eat standing, eyes on the horizon, body aware of the biting wind, mind already preparing for the tasks ahead. When the meal ends, the camp is fully awake. Jers stand open, smoke spirals upward, and horses stamp impatiently against the frost. You test the edge of your sword, sharp, steady, faithful. You draw your bow and listen to the taut hum of the string. That sound is the heartbeat of a Mongol warrior, controlled, focused, unbreakable. And as you tighten the final buckle of your armor, the thought settles in you like a weight and a flame. This day is not just another dawn. It is another stone placed on the road of an empire the world will one day whisper about. Another step in a march that refuses to slow. And you, a single soldier among thousands, are part of that march, shaping the world with every breath you take on this relentless steppe. The morning grows brighter, but the cold refuses to let go of the earth. Dawn on the steppe is always a negotiation between light and frost, and as you step away from the warmth of your gur, you feel that icy truth settle in your joints. Yet you move with purpose. A Mongol soldier is not shaped by comfort, but by the sharp edge of necessity. Around you, the camp is shifting from half-silence into focused motion. Hundreds of soldiers move with a quiet discipline that feels less like the chaos of an army and more like the inner workings of some great living creature. Every man knows what to do, where to stand, which tasks matter first. This unspoken order is one of the Khan's greatest strengths, an army that needs no shouting to awaken. You begin your own morning ritual, one repeated so often it has carved grooves into your muscles and your instincts. First comes the bow. You take in your hands with a reverence most men reserve for sacred idols. The composite bow of the Mongols is not merely a weapon. It is a promise, a bond between warrior, horse, and sky. You run your fingers along the horn and sinew, checking for even the smallest crack. Any flaw, however slight, could mean death. You string it carefully, listening for the clear, precise note of tension. When the bowstring vibrates, it sounds like the first breath of battle. Next comes the quiver. You inspect each arrow one by one. Straight shaft, firm fletching, sharp iron tip. You know how far each arrow can fly just by its weight in your hand. You know which arrow will pierce armor, which will bring down a deer, which will find a target running full speed on horseback. A Mongol soldier doesn't simply carry arrows. He carries dozens of solutions to dozens of possible deaths. You then check your saddle and stirrups, feeling every knot and strap. A loose strap can be worse than an enemy blade. A misplaced stirrup can throw you to the earth and invite a horse to trample you. Your hands move fast, but not carelessly. Each motion is a reminder that survival is not an act of luck, but of mastery. Your horse stands calmly as you work. Its breath fogs the air, warm and steady, and the rise and fall of its chest helps ground you. You know the rhythm of this animal better than the rhythm of your own heartbeat. The Mongol soldier and his horse form a single living unit. You can fire in any direction from its back. You can race across open land, through forests, over rivers, across frozen plains. This bond is not companionship. It is the foundation of empire. You feed the animal a handful of dried pasture and stroke its neck. The horse does not nuzzle you out of affection, but out of trust. The trust earned from miles of riding, from sharing storms and hunger, from sleeping exposed under the same sky. Out here, loyalty is built through survival. As the camp fully awakens, commanders begin to emerge, wrapped in fur-lined deals, eyes sharp even in the early light. Their voices carry across the wind, delivering instructions, assignments, formation changes. But even these commands flow into the existing order rather than disrupting it. The Mongol army is like a river. Changes in flow are felt instantly, without confusion. At the center of the camp, fires are burning brighter now. Cauldrons of milk tea bubble over them, sending warm, fatty aroma into the wind. You scoop a steaming bowl and drink slowly. The heat fills your throat, spreading strength through your chest. A second bowl holds pieces of meat and curd, not soft, not flavorful, but nourishing, enough to sustain you for hours of riding, for drilling with weapons, for any sudden mission. As you eat, your eyes drift across the camp. You see younger recruits, barely more than boys, struggling to fasten their armor. You recognize the clumsy movements of the inexperienced. For a moment you remember your first months, the raw hands, the aching legs, the overwhelming fear of making a mistake. And yet here you stand now, hardened, sharpened, shaped. If they survive the winter marches, the river crossings, the long exhausting rides, they too will learn the rhythm that now lives in your bones. Once breakfast is done, you tie your deal more securely, adjust your belt, check the weight of your knife and your short sword. You make sure your armor plates are aligned and your boots tied tight around your calves. Every detail of your gear is a decision that could mean life or defeat. These preparations are not routine, they are sacred. Then comes the final part of the ritual. You lift your gaze and allow yourself to truly see the steppe. The vastness stretches outward in all directions, unbroken, unending. A horizon so wide it feels like a living being. The grass bends under the wind in long waves, turning the land into a restless sea. Clouds race overhead, pushed along by the same force that drives your people. And in the distance, you can spot the silhouettes of riders beginning their morning patrols, small but unmistakable. Every time you look at this landscape, it reminds you of who you are. Not just a soldier, not just a servant of the Khan, but a child of the steppe, carved out of wind, hunger, endurance, and fierce will. These lands do not allow weakness. They shape legends through hardship. You tighten the straps on your horse, swing the quiver onto your back, and let the cold morning air fill your lungs. Today might bring travel, or training, or hunting, or battle. You do not know. In the Khan's army, everything can change in a heartbeat, but you are ready, because readiness is not something you do. It is something you have become. When the signal finally rises above the morning noise of the camp, it doesn't come as a shout or a horn blast, but as a deep, rhythmic vibration carried through the movement of horses and men. It is the kind of signal a Mongol soldier feels more than hears. A ripple travels through the rows of tents. Soldiers begin tightening straps, swinging themselves up onto their mounts, fastening quivers across their backs. The air itself feels like it shifts direction, pulled forward by purpose. You climb onto your horse with a practiced motion, your body fitting into its place like a puzzle piece carved through years of riding. The animal shifts under your weight, strong and ready, as if it has been waiting all morning for this exact breath of movement. Its ears turned back to listen for your subtle commands, its muscles vibrating with contained energy. The bond between you feels almost ancient, as if generations of riders before you are guiding your hands. The camp begins its transformation from a spread-out settlement into a disciplined column of riders. Smoke from the cooking fires thins into the wind, carrying the last traces of warmth from the morning tea and meat. Tents are collapsed, supplies bundled, and wagons dragged into formation. Women and children who travel with the army help with efficiency born of necessity. Everyone here has a role, woven tightly into the life of the moving machine that is the Mongol horde. As the column stretches into motion, the ground trembles beneath thousands of hooves. The vibration climbs into your legs and settles into your chest, syncing your heartbeat with the rhythm of the army. This universal thrum is a language in itself, a pulse that every Mongol understands. It signifies power. It signifies unity. It signifies inevitability. The steppe spreads ahead, endless and untamed. The grass bends in long golden arcs as the wind sweeps across it, creating a shimmering wave that seems to guide your direction. The horizon feels impossibly far, a silent promise that something lies beyond it, something worth moving toward even if you don't know precisely what it is yet. This is the essence of life as a Mongol soldier, riding into uncertainty with the confidence that your training, your horse, your weapons, and your people will carry you through whatever waits. The march begins slow, allowing the entire formation to synchronize. Scouts ride out ahead, small figures against the immense backdrop of land and sky. Their silhouettes flicker in and out of view as they disappear into distant ripples of terrain. They search for game, for enemies, for safe paths forward. These scouts are the eyes of the army, and you know that if danger lurks ahead, they will spot it long before the rest of you approach. Your own unit settles into a steady pace. The horses breathe warmly in unison, clouds of vapor forming and dissolving with each exhale. The riders remain quiet. Mongol soldiers don't waste words during a march. The steppe itself provides enough noise to fill the silence. Wind whistles past your ears, rustling through your clothing. Hooves strike the earth in a constant drumming pattern. The distant calls of birds echo across the open plains. It feels like the world is singing a harsh, primal song. After some time, the ride becomes almost meditative. Your body moves with the horse, swaying gently with each stride. The bow at your side taps against your thigh. Your quiver rustles faintly with every shift of motion. You can feel the weight of the sky above you, vast but not oppressive, almost like a companion. In these moments, your mind drifts. You think about your home campfire to the east, the smell of warm milk tea, the laughter of siblings, the sound of elders telling stories by firelight. You remember how your father taught you to shoot from horseback, making you ride without reins until your legs ached and your hands shook. His voice echoes in your memory, telling you that a Mongol soldier must guide his horse with his body, not his grip. You used to resent those grueling lessons. Now, you realize they built the strength that keeps you alive. Hours pass. The wind grows sharper as the sun climbs higher. Dust rises in thin spirals from the ground, settling onto your clothing and skin. You lick your lips and taste earth. This is normal. This is home. Eventually, the formation slows. Something ahead has changed. You see officers riding back and forth, assessing terrain, exchanging signals. Scouts have returned, their faces serious, their horses sweating lightly. They speak to the commanders with quick, efficient gestures. You don't know exactly what they found, but the subtle shift in the officer's posture tells you that the march is about to change from routine to purposeful. Your heart quickens. The step is full of possibilities. A herd to hunt, a river crossing, a rival tribe's tracks, a foreign caravan, or the first whisper of a distant conquest. Your hand instinctively rests on your bow. Whatever lies ahead, you are ready to face it. Because every mile you travel, every breath of steppe air you take, every thunderous beat of hooves beneath you reminds you of the same truth. You are part of something larger than yourself, something that moves with the inevitability of a storm front. The march continues. The steppe opens its arms wider, and you feel the pull of destiny tighten around you. By midday, the sun has climbed high, stretching its pale light across the endless steppe as you ride in formation. The hooves of hundreds of horses drum a low, steady thunder that vibrates through your legs and climbs up your spine. This rhythm has become as familiar as your own heartbeat. You ride with your bow resting across your thigh, your quiver secured behind you, every piece of equipment checked and rechecked. In the army of the Great Khan, carelessness is a death sentence. Precision is survival. The air bites with a dry chill despite the sun. Wind sweeps across the grasslands, pulling your cloak back and stinging your cheeks until they burn. But you're used to this. Every warrior around you is. You trade a glance with a comrade riding beside you, his breath misting, his braids whipping behind him. No words pass. You speak through endurance, through the simple fact that you are all still riding. The day stretches on, the landscape shifting subtly. Low hills rise and fall like the backs of sleeping beasts. Herds of wild horses scatter at your approach, kicking up clouds of dust that twist into the wind. Scouts ride far ahead, mere specks on the horizon. Their silhouettes serve as a silent reminder that danger can appear from anywhere, at any time. Whether enemy riders, hidden settlements, or traps laid by tribes resisting Mongol expansion, the open steppe is never truly empty. Your commander's signal changes in pace with short, sharp calls and raised banners. The army flows like a single enormous creature responding instantly. Sometimes you gallop. Sometimes you slow to a steady trot to conserve the horses. Each man rides with multiple mounts, rotating them so none are pushed to collapse. The horses are your lifeline, your battlefield, your home between homes. Hours pass. The weight of your armor presses into your shoulders. Sweat gathers under the leather and fur, then chills in the wind. Still, you push on because this is what life under the Khan demands. To conquer, to reach farther, to remain unbroken. As the sun dips downward, shadows stretch like black ribbons across the earth. Your legs ache, your throat is dry, but your spirit is steady. You think of the Great Khan's words, the belief that the heavens themselves have chosen your people to bring order across the world. Whether that's destiny or simply the belief you need to survive, you no longer question it. When the evening signal finally rises, calling the column to slow and prepare to rest, you feel a wave of relief, so subtle you barely let it show. You tighten your grip on the reins, steadying your mount as the formation spreads outward to find suitable ground. The day has been long, but this is only one march in a lifetime of marches. For a warrior of the Mongol Empire, the road is endless and the horizon is your only constant companion. Night begins its slow descent over the horizon as your unit finally halts, and the great tide of riders spills outward across the grasslands to form camp. The sudden silence after hours of constant hoofbeats feels almost unnatural, as if the world itself is holding its breath. Horses snort and toss their heads, while men stretch sore backs and rub stiffened legs. You slide off your mount, boots sinking slightly into the cold earth, and exhale a long, steady breath you didn't know you were holding. The first task is always the same: tend to the horses. No matter how tired you are, no matter how freezing the wind becomes, the horses eat and drink before any warrior does. You loosen the saddle, wipe down the sweating flank, and check each hoof. Your horse nudges your shoulder with its muzzle, warm breath puffing against your fur collar. It's a small gesture, but it reminds you how much your life depends on this animal. On the steppe, the bond between man and horse is deeper than most friendships. Around you, camp slowly comes alive. Warriors spread out in quick, efficient motions. Some gather dried grass or dung for fuel. Others prepare cooking pots or reinforce tent frames. The smell of boiling meat rises into the air, mingling with the sharp scent of smoke. The wind whistles low across the plains, tugging at the flaps of yurts being erected piece by piece. Even here, hundreds of miles from home, the structure of a Mongol camp feels familiar, almost comforting. Order in the middle of vast emptiness. As twilight deepens, the sky shifts into deep purples and steel blues. Stars begin punching through the fading light. The night on the steppe comes fast, cold and merciless. You wrap your cloak tighter, feeling the temperature drop like a stone thrown into water. Your breath fogs heavily now. In the distance, wolves howl, their voices stretching thin across the plains. No one reacts. Their calls are just another part of steppe life, like the wind and the dust. Dinner is simple: fatty broth, hard cheese, dried meat softened in boiling water. It's not luxurious, but it fills your stomach and warms your chest. Around the fires, men sit in loose circles, sharing stories of past raids or joking quietly to keep morale steady. Laughter comes in short bursts, but it's real, genuine. A reminder that even hardened warriors cling to small moments of humanity in the midst of endless campaigns. Your commander eventually strides through the firelight, giving brief instructions for the night watch and tomorrow's march. His voice is calm, confident, carrying the weight of someone who has ridden under the Khan's banners for decades. You nod along with the others as he speaks. Orders are clear. The path ahead is clear. The mission is always clear. When your shift for watch finally arrives, you stand outside the circle of firelight with your bow in hand, scanning the dark waves of grass stretching into infinity. The moon rises, pale and cold, illuminating the land in a silvery glow. Your thoughts drift between home, duty, and the unending horizon. The quiet is both peaceful and unsettling. Anything could be out there, but nothing comes. By the time you crawl into your bedroll, exhaustion pulls at every muscle. You breathe in the scent of grass and leather, listening to the low murmur of sleeping warriors all around you. Tomorrow will be another long march, another day defined by discipline, endurance, and the will of the great Khan. On the steppe, rest is temporary. Purpose is eternal. Before the first hint of sunlight cracks open the sky, you're already awake. On the steppe, morning doesn't arrive gently. It creeps in through icy breaths of wind that slip beneath your cloak and press against your skin like cold metal. Your eyes open to a world still wrapped in darkness, the camp silent except for the faint snorts of restless horses and the low crackle of embers refusing to die. You rise slowly, joints stiff, muscles protesting after the long march. Sleep is a luxury you rarely get enough of, yet you've trained your body to answer the morning without hesitation. Every warrior of the Khan knows that discipline begins before dawn, long before the mind is fully caught up with the body. Around you, other soldiers stir from their blankets, their silhouettes moving like shadows. No one speaks at first. The early hours belong to breath, to the cold, to quiet focus. You retrieve your bow, fingers brushing against its polished surface, feeling the familiar grooves worn by constant use. This weapon is not merely a tool. It is your identity, your lifeline, your place in the vast machinery of the Empire. A horn sounds softly, not an alarm, but a signal. Training begins. You step out beyond the ring of tents, your boots crunching over brittle frost. The horizon glows faintly with a strip of faded silver as the sky slowly abandons its darkness. Several soldiers gather near you, some veteran riders with faces carved by wind and years, others younger men who still carry hints of uncertainty in their eyes. You remember being like them once, before the endless marches, before the first ambush, before the first kill hardened your spirit. Your commander arrives on horseback, the early light sharpening the edges of his armor into silver lines. Without a word, he gestures toward the open plain. You mount your horse, settling into the familiar sway of its movement as you ride out to practice grounds marked only by memory and instinct. There are no walls here, no barriers, no borders, just the vastness of the steppe stretching as far as the horizon dares. The training begins with archery from horseback, the skill that makes the Mongol army feared across continents. You launch into a gallop, letting the horse's movement become part of your breath, your bones, your rhythm. At full speed, you twist in the saddle, draw back the bowstring, and release. The arrow whistles through the cold air, hitting the distant target with a satisfying thud. The next arrow flies cleaner, the next faster. You feel your blood warming, your senses sharpening. Beside you, other warriors fire in perfect synchronization, each shot a note in a deadly symphony. The unity is palpable, almost spiritual. You are not simply individuals training. You are strands in the same rope, tensioned and braided into something strong enough to shape empires. After archery comes close combat drills. You dismount, driving your heels into the ground as you practice sweeping strikes, pivots, feints with blades dulled only for safety. The muscles in your shoulders burn. Your breath grows heavier. Sweat slides down your temples, despite the freezing air. Then comes the endurance run, a long, punishing sprint across uneven terrain meant to test your lungs, your legs, and your willpower. You push forward, the cold slicing your throat, but you keep moving. Because a Mongol warrior doesn't quit. Not during raids, not during ambushes, not in training. The Great Khan demands excellence, and excellence can only be forged through suffering willingly embraced. By the time the sun finally breaks over the horizon, painting the sky in golds and pale pinks, your body aches in every possible way. Yet beneath the exhaustion, there's a deep, grounding sense of purpose. You glance at the warriors around you, their chests rising and falling with heavy breaths, steam curling from their lips like smoke from a forge. These men are your brothers, your world, your strength. You return to camp as fires are being rekindled and breakfast is being prepared. The smell of boiled mutton drifts through the cold air. You wipe frost from your beard and sit beside your comrades as the warmth begins to seep into your numb fingers. You think about the road ahead, the marches, the battles, the uncertainty. But for now, in this fragile moment between night and day, you feel steady, purposeful, alive. Tomorrow will come. War will come. But right now you breathe in the dawn, a warrior forged by wind, steel, and endless horizon. Hazurson Section 7 Ye Aini Yogan Lukta Devam Etabilarum. As the morning training finally winds down and your breath settles back into a steady rhythm, camp begins to shift into its daytime form. Dawn's silver haze brightens into a cold, unwavering sun, and with it the entire horde stirs into organized motion. But unlike the soldiers who prepare for another march or tend to their horses, you've been assigned a different duty today, one that offers a rare glimpse into the enormous machinery behind the Mongol Empire, a responsibility that reminds you the world you ride through is far bigger than steel and muscle. Your task is to assist the envoys and shamans who travel with the army, a group whose presence many outsiders overlook. Yet within the Khan's domain, their influence is profound. You approach a cluster of white-furred tents, each marked with symbols of ancestry, spirits, and conquest. Incense trails through the air, rising like ghostly fingers toward the clear sky. carrying the bitter scent of herbs and charred resin. Inside one of the tents, the shamans sit in a half-circle, their faces painted with pale stripes of ash. They sway gently, murmuring chants that sound older than memory itself, voices threading together like strands of wind. You stand at the entryway, feeling the vibration of their words settle somewhere deep in your ribs. These rituals aren't mere superstition. They're the spiritual glue holding the army together. Soldiers may bleed for the Khan, but the shamans keep their spirits from fracturing in the endless tide of war. Your job is simple. Deliver fresh water, pack their supplies, prepare the horses that will carry them to the next camp. Yet the work feels different, heavier, as though you've stepped into the engine room of something sacred. Not far from the shaman circle, the diplomatic envoys gather around a mapping table, unfurling scrolls marked with the borders of kingdoms you've only heard whispered about. The Jin dynasty, the Horazm Empire, distant lands rumored to hold wealth beyond imagination. Their voices carry a strange mix of calm calculation and quiet intensity. They speak of negotiations, demands, warnings, and the possibility of war. Always the possibility of war. You linger near them, pretending to secure saddle straps while actually absorbing every word you can. To witness the envoys at work is to watch the quieter side of conquest unfold. They don't wield bows or swords, but their presence determines which cities burn and which become allies. You can't help but feel a subtle shift inside yourself, a widening of perspective. The empire is not shaped only by warriors like you. It's shaped by minds, beliefs, and agreements woven through tense conversations that decide the fate of entire civilizations. By midday, the shamans finish their rituals. Some look exhausted, their eyes heavy, their hands trembling from channeling whatever unseen forces they claim to touch. Others look invigorated, their gaze is sharp, as if they've glimpsed a future the rest of you will soon walk into unknowingly. When they speak to you, their voices are soft but weighted. They ask you questions, not about battles, but about dreams, about the feeling in the air, whether the horses seemed uneasy, whether your arrows flew true. You answer each one carefully, knowing these details matter more to them than to most commanders. For shamans, the world is stitched together by signs you wouldn't normally notice. As the day stretches on, you help prepare their caravan for travel. You lift crates of dried herbs, coils of rope, bundles of ceremonial garments, jars sealed with wax. You fasten saddles designed for long distance, riding rather than battle. Each step feels deliberate, almost ritualistic. The sun begins its slow descent, casting long shadows across the camp. The diplomats prepare to meet with the generals. The shamans mount their horses, ready to follow the horde to the next horizon. And you, dusty, tired, but somehow sharper than you were hours before, realize something important. Being a Mongol warrior is not just about strength. It's about belonging to a vast, multi-layered world where every voice, every ritual, every decision threads into the spirit of the empire. You walk back to the soldiers' camp with a new understanding humming inside your chest. You're part of something enormous, something ancient, something terrifying and magnificent all at once. The sun sinks lower over the steppe, bleeding gold into the horizon, and with its descent the camp shifts once again. The air grows colder, sharper. Shadows deepen beneath the horses, and the wind begins to move with a new urgency. This is the hour when soldiers settle down, but commanders rise. Strategy wakes up when the light dies. You've been assigned to assist the perimeter guards near the general's council tent, a rare vantage point that few warriors ever experience. It's not a glamorous task, but it places you within arm's reach of the minds who are shaping the fate of nations. And in the Mongol army, proximity to leadership feels like standing close to the core of a storm. You sense power even when you cannot see it directly. The council tent stands at the very center of camp, marked with banners fluttering in the cold wind, each emblazoned with the insignia of a different Tumen commander. Guards flank the entrance, their armor heavier, their expressions far more severe than the typical soldiers. As you take your place among them, you feel the weight of the moment settle over your shoulders. Inside, the council is already underway. You cannot see much through the thick felt walls, but you hear the voices. Low, rumbling, confident. Men who have carved empires speak in tones so calm it chills you more than any shout would. Their words rise and fall in a measured rhythm that speaks of experience, strategy, calculation. These are not brutes blindly swinging swords. These are predators planning their next kill. Through a small flap, you glimpse a map stretched across the central table. It's enormous, covered in dark strokes of ink marking mountain ranges, rivers, fortresses, and trade routes. Stones mark the movement of armies. Colored threads represent alliances, rebellions, and tribute networks. The map looks less like parchment and more like a living organism, pulsing with territorial hunger. Generals stand or sit around it, each wearing armor decorated with unique emblems. Some trace their fingers along borders, others argue quietly, and a few simply observe in silence, absorbing every detail with predatory focus. You spot envoys from earlier, offering reports, relaying messages from distant scouts, or presenting agreements forged under tense negotiations. Then you hear it, the voice of the highest-ranking general present, deep, controlled, a voice that carries the weight of life and death for thousands. Our scouts report the fortress has doubled its patrols. Our archers outrange theirs. Fear will open their gates before steel does. The Khan will want proof of loyalty, not merely submission. Then we will give him a victory carved into the memory of every survivor. Each sentence feels like a stone dropping into your stomach. This is where wars are born, not on the battlefield, but here, in the quiet tension beneath dim lantern light. Hours pass. The sun fully disappears, replaced by a moon bright enough to cast long pale shadows across the plains. The tent glows softly from within as candles illuminate the war council. You stand guard, listening to the quiet murmur of tactics, the scratch of brush against parchment, the deliberate shifting of markers on the map. Every movement inside sounds purposeful, heavy with consequence. At one point a shaman enters the tent. The voices fall silent as he steps forward, his garments decorated with bones and beads that clatter softly with each movement. He kneels, sets down a bowl of burning herbs, and begins a chant that rattles the air. You feel the energy change from where you stand. The council listens, not out of superstition, but out of respect. In the Mongol world, luck, fate, and the will of the sky must all be acknowledged before a campaign begins. When the shaman departs, the generals continue with renewed confidence. Another hour passes, then another. Warriors may rest easily at night, but strategists never do. Finally, near midnight, the flap opens. Cold air rushes inside as one of commanders steps out. He grips his cloak tightly against the wind. His face is hard, unreadable, but there's a glint in his eyes, something sharp, decisive, the kind of expression men carry when they know the shape of tomorrow. The meeting ends shortly after. One by one, the generals emerge, each greeted with respectful bows from guards. Their expressions all share a similar intensity. A plan has been chosen. A decision has been made. The empire will move. As you stand quietly, your commander approaches you. "Be ready," he says simply. "Tomorrow, everything changes." A chill moves through you that has nothing to do with the night air. The machinery of war has shifted into motion. And you, one small piece within its massive gears, feel the weight of that truth settle over you like a second set of armor. In the Mongol army, orders flow like rivers, swift, unstoppable. You don't know exactly what tomorrow will bring, only that the horizon will not look the same once the horde rides across it. You breathe in deeply, steadying your spirit as you look at the moonlit steppe. The silence of night feels temporary. The calm before a storm the whole world will feel. The moon now hung high in the sky, casting a pale, misty light that stretched long shadows across the steppe. On the surface, the camp seemed silent, but every living thing felt the tension hiding in that quiet. You remain on watch, chest heavy with responsibility, your eyes adjusted to the dark, your ears tuned to catch the faintest crackle or whisper. Suddenly, from the distance, the sharp sound of hooves mixed with hushed murmurs. Your attention sharpens as shadows move across the periphery, scouts, swift and silent, signaling each other with subtle gestures. It hits you. Enemy movements are faster than expected. The boundaries of the camp are being tested not just now, but every moment. At the heart of the camp, the great war tent glows, candles flickering against its thick walls. Inside, discussions, strategies, and calculations continue unabated. Yet from your vantage point, you sense how every decision ripples outward. Every stone shifted on the map, every word spoken, spreads across the steppe like a silent storm. A commander steps out, circling the camp briefly. His eyes glint in the moonlight, scanning, calculating. Even in silence, he communicates the weight of what is to come. You realize that these small movements, these quiet inspections, carry as much consequence as the battle itself. The night deepens. Wind scours the plains, whispering against tents, carrying the faint scent of smoke and earth. You shift slightly, muscles taut, senses sharpened. Somewhere beyond, a wolf howls, a solitary note that seems almost like a signal. Time feels suspended. Here, on the edge of action, the world narrows to the soft sound of horses breathing, the creak of leather, the flicker of light. And beneath it all, you understand. Tomorrow, the steppe will no longer look the same. Tonight, you are a witness to the gears of war turning, silent yet inexorable, moving toward an inevitable dawn. You take a deep breath, bracing yourself. The stillness is temporary. The storm approaches, and the Mongol horde will ride its shadow across the land. The moon had climbed high, spilling its silvery light over the vast steppe. Shadows stretched long and thin across the frozen grass, moving like silent phantoms in the pale glow. At first glance, the camp appeared calm, almost serene, but the truth was different. You felt the tension in the air as tangibly as the cold that bit at your exposed skin. Every breath was sharp, every sound amplified. A rustling tent flap, the distant whinny of a horse, the muted footfalls of soldiers patrolling the outer perimeter. You were part of a silent watch, a single presence standing between chaos and order, and the weight of it pressed into your bones. From the corner of your vision, a shadow shifted. Scouts returned from the distant horizon, moving with a precision and silence that seemed unnatural to anyone who had not been trained to blend into the steppe. They communicated with hand signals so subtle that an untrained eye could miss them entirely. You could feel the pulse of urgency even before the first word reached your ears. They carried intelligence, reports of distant patrols, whispers of enemy movements, rumors from far-off settlements. It was a reminder that the war stretched far beyond the edges of the camp, that the battlefield was alive long before swords were drawn. At the center of the camp, the council tent glowed softly, its walls thick with felt and reinforced with poles of sturdy timber, hummed with the faint energy of human minds at work. Inside, the generals continued their deliberations, low voices, deliberate gestures, markers sliding across maps that were far larger than the largest table you had ever seen. Every motion was purposeful. You could almost see the thought process, the tracing of borders, the placement of troops, the weighing of allies and enemies. Each movement was a note in a symphony of strategy that you were privileged to witness, though only at the periphery. The air shifted as a commander emerged, his cloak brushing the ground in muted swishes. His eyes scanned the camp, absorbing every detail, the arrangement of horses, the positioning of sentries, the quiet alignment of supply wagons. You noted the slight crease in his brow, a subtle twitch in his jaw. These were the small signs of calculation, the indicators that every leader carried constantly, like an invisible armor of awareness. Even in silence, the weight of command was evident. The wind picked up, carrying scents across the frozen plain. Smoke from distant fires mingled with the earthy tang of frost-hardened grass. Somewhere beyond, a lone wolf raised its voice in a mournful howl, echoing across the open plains. The sound was haunting, almost like a signal threading through the night. You thought of the steppe as a living entity, aware of every footstep and whisper, and understood how deeply connected warriors were to it. The land itself seemed to wait, listening, watching, poised for what was to come. Hours slipped by unnoticed. You shifted your weight, muscles taut, senses stretching toward every sound. The camp was not asleep, though the casual observer might think otherwise. Fires burned low but steady, illuminating circles of warriors sitting silently or moving with quiet purpose. Horses nickered softly, and the occasional clatter of tack against wood echoed faintly. Beyond the camp, shadows flickered in the darkness, scouts on patrol, the distant glimmer of a river under moonlight, the occasional movement of an animal unseen but sensed. Every detail mattered, every movement a potential sign of what tomorrow might bring. Inside the council tent, the generals' voices rose and fell in rhythm, measured and calm, masking the tension that underlay every decision. You could sense the invisible weight of responsibility they bore. Maps were consulted and reconsulted. Stones and colored threads marked movements and alliances, rebellions and tribute networks. Each decision would ripple outward, touching lives and lands far beyond the steppe. The generals did not need to raise their voices. The quiet intensity of their focus carried the same authority as any shout on a battlefield. A shaman entered the tent, his arrival marking a shift in energy. Bones clattered softly, beads jingled, and the faint smell of burning herbs wafted outward. Even outside, you felt the air hum differently. The generals paused, attentive. Their respect for the unseen, the forces of fate and sky, was absolute. The shaman's chant reverberated in the quiet night, threading through the maps, the markers, and the minds of the men plotting empires. It was not superstition. It was acknowledgement that even the sharpest strategy must contend with luck, with the whims of the world itself. As the shaman departed, the generals continued with renewed focus. Each word, each movement carried weight. The subtle tension of the night deepened, and you felt your own heartbeat in response. Every shift in the tent echoed across the camp. The placement of a marker, the low murmur of discussion, the soft scrape of a brush on parchment. Outside, soldiers adjusted their positions instinctively, aware of the ripples even if they did not understand their source. Then, a sudden stir caught your attention. The distant tree line, black against the moonlit horizon, held movement. Scouts, or perhaps something more, slipped between shadows with preternatural silence. You caught the faint glint of metal, the subtle rustle of leather. Your instinct sharpened. You were a small part of this immense machine, and yet the smallest of details could ripple into consequence. The night deepened further. The steppe seemed infinite, stretching beyond sight, endless and unyielding. Wind scoured the camp, tugging at cloaks and whipping banners into stiff, angular shapes. The moon cast long, unbroken shadows, and every sound, the distant drip of melting ice, the quiet stamp of hooves, the soft murmur of a sentry, was amplified. You felt both isolated and intensely present. The world had narrowed to the radius of your gaze, to the edge of your hearing, to the frozen patch of ground beneath your feet. Time became almost meaningless. You were aware of hours passing, yet it felt like seconds. The night carried on, carrying with it the steady, invisible flow of command. The generals were shaping a storm, one that would sweep the plains tomorrow. Every decision made, every marker placed on a map, every word spoken in that dim-lit tent was a stone dropped into the river of the future. And you were here, a single piece in that vast, intricate machine. Finally, as the first hints of pre-dawn light touched the horizon, the flap of the council tent opened. Commanders emerged, their cloaks heavy with frost, their faces hard and unreadable, but filled with that unmistakable glint of resolve. They moved through the camp with purpose, each step carrying the weight of a world poised on the edge of change. Soldiers bowed respectfully, but even their gestures seemed smaller compared to the immensity of the plans being carried out. Your own commander approaches, the cold wind tugging at his cloak. His eyes meet yours, sharp and assessing, and he speaks with quiet finality. "Be ready," he says. "Tomorrow everything changes." You draw a deep breath, letting it fill your lungs, steadying your spirit. The machinery of war has been set into motion. The steppe, so vast and silent only hours ago, now feels alive with impending movement. You are small, but essential, a single thread woven into the vast, unstoppable fabric of the Mongol horde. The wind shifts again. Horses snort, embers glow, and the faint sound of distant wolves drifts across the plains. You brace yourself, knowing the calm will not last. The storm approaches, and the steppe will feel it in every shadow, every footstep, every breath. You have been a witness to the forging of plans, the quiet shaping of empires, and tomorrow, all of it will come to life. The night is nearly over. The horizon begins to stir with the faint promise of dawn. You tighten your grip on your spear, settle your stance, and watch the moonlit plains, knowing the silence is temporary, and that the first ripple of the coming storm will change everything. The first streaks of dawn cut across the horizon, a pale wash of pink and silver spilling over the endless steppe. The wind had shifted overnight, carrying a sharper edge that bit at exposed skin and whipped banners into taut, fluttering lines. You tighten your grip on your spear, feeling the cold steel against your palm, a grounding presence in the growing tension. Around you, the camp stirs. Fires are rekindled, tents are struck, and the low murmur of orders spreads like a rising tide. Horses snort and paw at the ground, restless. The Mongol mounts are more than beasts. They are extensions of the warriors who ride them, partners in a machine honed for speed and destruction. Sentries move with disciplined precision, forming ranks, checking armor, adjusting quivers and saddles. Every movement is efficient, deliberate, rehearsed countless times, before yet performed now with the gravity of imminent action. From the center of the camp, the council tent's flap opens one last time. Generals emerge, their faces set like stone, cloaks heavy with frost, eyes glinting with the certainty of men who know that today, the world itself will bend to their will. Their presence commands silence. Even the wind seems to still, as if listening, waiting. They do not speak loudly. Words are unnecessary. Their intent radiates, palpable, a force that shapes the movements of hundreds of soldiers before orders are even given. You follow their lead from your post, watching as the horde comes alive. Flags rise atop every wagon and pole, each tuman marked with a unique emblem, signaling not just identity but readiness. You can feel the tension coiling in the air, an energy that hums through the camp, through the horses, through the warriors themselves. Every eye is sharp, every hand steady, every step precise. The steppe is quiet, but beneath the quiet is the sound of power, silent, massive, inevitable. From your vantage point, you see the first waves of movement. Scouts break away, slipping over the frost-hardened grass, silent as shadows. They fan outward, extending the eyes and ears of the Khan across the plains. Wagons carrying supplies and siege equipment roll carefully behind, pulled by teams of horses and oxen, each driver alert to the smallest sound or irregularity. The Mongol army is not chaotic. It is a living organism, every part attuned to the rest, every motion intentional, every heartbeat synchronized to the rhythm of conquest. A commander rides past, the morning light glinting on the polished steel of his armor. He scans the perimeter, his gaze cutting through the cold haze. Even from a distance, you sense his command, the way his eyes move, the slight tilt of his head, the subtle adjustments he makes to the formations around him. Soldiers respond instantly, unseen strings tugged by invisible hands, each movement flowing like water into the larger current of strategy. The scent of horses, leather, and earth mingles with the smoke of newly lit fires. You catch the faint tang of blood, from wounds treated overnight, from horses that had been worked hard preparing for the march. It is the smell of discipline, of preparation, of life ready to pour into violence. And yet it is not chaos. It is controlled. It is inevitable. Overhead, the sun climbs higher, gilding the steppe in a warm light that belies the cold underfoot. Shadows shrink, but tension grows. You feel it in the rigid muscles of the guards around you, in the restless shifting of horses, in the sharp, focused expressions of commanders moving among their men. Every soldier is a node in a vast network of readiness, Every rank a testament to centuries of perfected military efficiency. Orders begin to flow in a subtle rhythm. A whistle here, a shout there. A hand signal caught by one soldier and mirrored across the line. The horde begins to move as one, a wave of controlled fury stretching across the plains. Dust rises, and the sound of hooves becomes a low, rolling thunder, vibrating through the frozen ground beneath your feet. You feel the vibration in your chest, a warning and a promise. This is no longer a camp at rest. This is a storm waiting to break. You glance back at the council tent one last time. The generals are mounted now, riding at the center of the formations they had plotted hours before. Their faces betray nothing, but their eyes hold all the certainty of men who have seen empires fall and rise, men who know that the first clash will echo across the world. The horizon trembles with motion. Scouts return with signals of enemy activity. A distant ridge begins to stir as the first signs of resistance appear. Every thread of the map inside the council tent is now mirrored on the ground. Stone, horse, and man moving in precise accordance with plans made under candlelight. The wind rises, carrying away the last vestiges of night, scattering smoke and frost alike. The steppe, vast and indifferent, awaits the coming tide. You take a deep breath, your muscles taut, senses stretched to the limit. You are a small part of this massive organism, yet your role is no less vital. A single falter here, a single misstep, could ripple through the machine, but the machine is strong, and it will not fail. The first charge sounds, scout signaling, war horns low but clear. The Mongol horde begins to ride, thousands of hooves pounding the frozen earth, banners snapping like blades in the wind. You feel the ground vibrate beneath your boots, the sky itself seeming to lean forward, anticipating the storm. Your commander turns to you, eyes sharp, expression unreadable. Move with them. Stand ready. Watch, and be the first to carry the signal if the line falters. You nod, tightening your grip, letting the cold steel of your spear remind you that the night of waiting is over. Tomorrow, the plains will burn with motion. Today, Khan's army rides as one unstoppable force, and in that moment, you understand fully. The calm before the storm is gone. The storm itself has begun. The steppe was alive now, not with calm, but with a low, rolling vibration that carried through the frozen earth. Hooves struck the ground like the steady drumbeat of war. Dust and frost kicked into swirling clouds around thousands of mounted warriors. From your vantage point, you could see the horde stretching farther than the eye could reach. An endless line of black and brown, armor glinting, banners snapping sharply in the wind. The air itself seemed charged, crackling with anticipation. Scouts had already moved ahead, slipping over ridges and through valleys, sending back signals and barely audible clicks and whistles. You listened intently, catching the faintest murmurs of distant movement. The enemy was awake now, reacting to the subtle stirrings of your own forces. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the first signs of sentries, the glint of armor, the movement of patrols, a mirrored preparation, told you that the world was about to collide with the will of the Khan. Orders moved along the ranks silently. One commander raised a hand, fingers extended in a subtle signal that spread like fire through the lines. Riders adjusted positions, formations shifted, the front pushing slightly forward, the rear falling into exact alignment. There was no hesitation, no doubt. Every soldier knew his place. Every horse knew its path. The Mongol army was a living organism, flowing and bending, capable of striking like lightning in multiple directions at once. From the ridge, you glimpsed the first real signs of engagement. Enemy scouts, perhaps emboldened, perhaps unaware of the horde's magnitude, had ventured too close. A single arrow streaked across the sky, a warning more than a threat, but it was enough. Instantly, the vanguard responded. Horses surged, a controlled wave of mounted warriors cutting a path with unerring precision. The sound of hooves, the clash of steel as spears met leather and shield, and the low, urgent calls of the commanders echoed across the plain. You felt your own pulse synchronize with the rhythm of the attack. Each movement had been rehearsed, yet there was the unpredictable edge of reality. Horses stumble, men falter, wind shifts, and everything changes in an instant. But the Mongols thrived in this uncertainty. Every soldier was trained to adapt, to anticipate, to become part of the motion rather than separate from it. The enemy's forward positions wavered. A fortress wall glimmered in the distance, cold stone catching the rising sun. Scouts reported back swiftly, and the generals adjusted the plan in real time. Bows were raised. Arrows cut through the air in silent lines, striking ahead of the main wave. Siege engines, previously hidden behind low ridges, began to roll forward, their crews moving with the calm efficiency of men who had prepared for this moment countless times before. From your post, you could see the subtle genius of Mongol tactics. The flanks spread wide, the center held strong, and the entire formation moved like water, pressing forward, bending around obstacles, exploiting weaknesses as they appeared. Every step, every signal, every glance carried meaning. The horde was a storm given form, an unstoppable tide guided by minds who had spent hours charting every hill, every river, every approach. A distant horn sounded, deep and resonant, marking the escalation. The first major clash was imminent. Horses reared, warriors adjusted their grips, and the air itself seemed to tense. Dust clouds rose to meet the sun, forming a shimmering veil that obscured the battlefield, but not your awareness. You could see the patterns, the shifting lines, the way the horde responded to the enemy's feints and probes. And then it began. The first true strike fell on the enemy's forward guard. Arrows rained down, striking shields and armor, while cavalry surged through the gaps, spears thrust with deadly precision. The enemy staggered, surprised by the sudden, coordinated ferocity. From where you stood, the battlefield looked almost like a living map, every color and movement representing forces in constant negotiation with one another. Stones and threads from the council table were now mirrored in blood and motion on the steppe. The generals rode among their men, calm, controlled, eyes scanning the chaos, adjusting formations with the slightest gestures. One hand raised, and a squadron veered left. A finger pointed, and another group pressed forward with uncanny timing. The battle was alive, and the Mongols were its masterful orchestrators. The smell of dust, sweat, and iron filled the air. Horses snorted, men shouted commands, and the wind carried the cries of battle across the plain. You felt the ground vibrate beneath you with the force of thousands of hooves and the impact of the first strikes. Each moment carried weight, each decision immediate consequence. There was no room for hesitation, no time for fear. Only motion, precision, and relentless execution. And in that chaos, you realized fully, this was the moment all the councils, all the maps, all the nights of quiet preparation had been building toward. The steppe had awakened. The storm had been unleashed. And now, it would not stop until it had reshaped the land itself. You tighten your grip, heart pounding, eyes fixed on the distant horizon. Every motion, every sound, every heartbeat mattered. The Mongol horde had begun its first strike, and the world would never be the same. The sun now blazed over the steppe, its early warmth doing little to ease the tension still hanging in the air. Dust clouds stretched like rolling hills, masking the movements of men and horses alike. You stood at the edge of the forward ranks, the vibrations of thousands of hooves still echoing through the frozen earth beneath your boots. The Mongol horde had struck first, and the battle had evolved into a living, breathing organism of strategy and force. The enemy had attempted to regroup behind their walls, but every approach, every maneuver, met with the relentless precision of the Mongol machine. Cavalry feints drew them out, only to be met with crushing flanks. Archers, expertly placed, rained arrows in deadly arcs, forcing soldiers to scatter or fall. Siege engines, timed perfectly with the cavalry, advanced steadily, each wheel turning with mechanical inevitability. The battlefield unfolded like a massive game board, each piece moved by minds who had long since calculated every possibility. You could see it from where you stood, the enemy faltering, confusion spreading like wildfire among their ranks. Commanders tried to rally, but every order was anticipated, countered, or absorbed by the unyielding tide of Mongol forces. The precision was terrifying. It was not just force, but intelligence in motion, a living map of dominance written in motion, blood, and dust. A wave of mounted warriors thundered past, spears extended, striking with the speed of lightning. Horses twisted and lunged, soldiers struck with brutal efficiency, and the enemy line broke apart under the dual weight of fear and unrelenting assault. You watched the patterns, recognizing the echo of the maps and markers from the council tents, now executed in three-dimensional reality. Every prediction, every plan, every calculation had come alive. Smoke rose from fires set to disrupt supply lines, the scent mixing with the iron tang of blood and the sweat of men and beasts. You could hear the battle as much as you could see it. The clashing of steel, the thunder of hooves, the cries of the fallen, and the disciplined calls of the Mongol commanders. The noise was chaos, but in it was order. The Mongols moved as one, a storm with eyes and mind, unstoppable in its precision. Through the chaos, you saw the generals riding among their men, their presence calm and commanding. Not a shout, not a gesture wasted. Each minor adjustment in formation, each subtle shift in rank, carried devastating consequence. They were predators watching a battlefield alive with prey, every movement controlled, every strike anticipated. The enemy could not outthink them. They could only try and fail. Hours passed, though time seemed meaningless under the unrelenting assault. By midday, the enemy had begun to crumble. Fortress walls that once seemed insurmountable now appeared fragile under the coordination of Mongol ingenuity and overwhelming force. Scouts returned with reports. Messages moved between commanders with lightning speed, and the battlefield shifted continuously under the relentless logic of the horde. And then, at last, the steppe fell silent, at least for a moment. The enemy had been broken. Survivors fled toward distant hills, abandoning weapons, supplies, and any hope of organized resistance. Horses panted, dust settled, and the Mongol banners, still snapping in the wind, stretched across the battlefield as far as the eye could see. You breathed deeply, letting the realization sink in. The storm had passed, leaving the plains transformed. What was once a quiet horizon, cold and indifferent, was now marked with the indelible imprint of Mongol dominance. The generals dismounted, walking among their men with quiet acknowledgement of the work completed. Eyes met, silent approval exchanged, and the weight of command settled over everyone in the horde. Your own commander approached, face unreadable, but eyes burning with the intensity of men who had seen the first strike succeed and the enemy broken. "Today, we have carved our will into the steppe," he said quietly. "Tomorrow, the world will remember." You nodded, shoulders heavy with exhaustion and awe. You had witnessed the full force of strategy, discipline, and raw power. You were a small part of the machine, but your eyes had seen the cogs turn, the gears mesh, the storm move with unerring precision. And now, the horde rested only briefly before the next command, the next horizon, the next conquest. The sun rose higher, casting long shadows over the transformed land. The steppe, vast and unyielding, had felt the weight of Mongol power, and nothing would be the same again. You looked out across the plains, the wind carrying the scent of horses, smoke, and iron, and understood fully. This was the price of empire, the inevitability of the Khan's will, and the relentless, unstoppable logic of the Mongol horde. The storm had passed, but the world would tremble for a long time under its shadow.